My hand trembled clutching Jim's phone, the screen glowing with a single damning message. Table for 2 at the Pink Door, 8:00 p.m. Saturday. She'll love the waterfront view. My breath caught sharp like a blade in my chest. 18 years of marriage, countless nights waiting by the door, every whispered promise Jim ever made. Gone shattered in a heartbeat. The man who swore he'd hold my hand through every storm had booked a romantic dinner for someone else. I stood in our Capitol Hill apartment, the Seattle skyline flickering through the window, and felt the world I'd built crumble. But as the shock faded, something else sparked inside me. Not tears, not rage, but a cold, clear resolve. If Jim thought he could hide this betrayal, he was wrong. I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was Nora Bennett, and I'd make him face the truth. Not with screams, but with a plan so sharp it'd cut deeper than any knife. I set the phone down, my fingers steady now, and stared at my reflection in the kitchen window. My name's Nora, 43, a marketing professor at the University of Washington. To the world, Jim Callahan and I were the perfect couple. A sleek apartment with views of Puget Sound, 2 thriving careers, and annual escapes to Hawaii's beaches. Friends envied our life, always saying, "You guys have it all." But beneath that polished surface, cracks had been spreading for years. I just refused to see them. Jim's late nights, his excuses about client dinners, the way he'd dodge my eyes when I asked about his day. I told myself it was stress, nothing more. A lie I clung to until that message tore it apart. That Friday evening, Jim was in the shower, the hum of water filling our apartment. His phone sat on the kitchen counter, forgotten, careless. I'd never snooped before. Trust was my armor, my pride. But something, call it instinct, call it dread, pulled me toward that glowing screen. The notification was simple, brutal. The Pink Door restaurant I'd begged Jim to take me to for years. Too pricey, he'd always said, brushing it off. Yet here he was planning a candlelit evening for someone else. My heart pounded, a metallic taste flooding my mouth. I didn't want to look further, but my hand moved before my mind could stop it. His passcode, our wedding date. 4 digits that once meant forever. The phone unlocked and I stepped into a world I didn't recognize. Messages, photos, entire conversations, stretching back nearly a year with a woman named Avery Mitchell. She worked in PR at Jim's financial consulting firm, young blonde with a smile that screamed confidence. They texted constantly, morning coffee, her outfit for the day. Flirty notes that made my stomach churn. Photos from a work trip to Portland. Avery nestled in Jim's arms, his grin brighter than I'd seen in a decade. I remembered that trip. He'd called me from the hotel, saying he was swamped with meetings. I'd believed him cooking dinner alone, waiting for a man who was already gone. The room spun, air vanishing, like I'd been sucked into a vacuum. I wanted to hurl the phone, to scream until the windows shook, but I stood frozen, knuckles, white heart racing like a trapped animal. "Nora, you seen." My gray tie, Jim's voice, cut through from the bathroom. Casual, oblivious, as if he hadn't just burned our marriage to the ground. Top drawer, I called back my voice, flat as strangers. I placed the phone exactly where it was, every muscle taut like a bowstring ready to snap. That night, I lay beside him, my back to his steady, breathing, my body rigid. How many times had I excused his distance? How many nights had I ignored the unfamiliar perfume, the too crisp shirts? Now I saw it all clear as the Seattle rain. By morning, I kissed him goodbye, my lips cold. "Good luck with the London clients," I said, watching him nod, clueless that I knew about his plans with Avery. The door clicked shut, and I was alone. I didn't cry. Instead, I called my department head, requesting a 3-day leave. Personal matters, I said, my tone clipped. I wasn't breaking down. I was building something new, a plan sharp and deliberate. Jim wanted a perfect night with Avery Fine. He'd get one, but it wouldn't be the fairy tale he imagined. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee cold, staring out at the city. 18 years of being the perfect wife were over. Now I was someone else, someone who'd make sure the truth shone brighter than any waterfront view. The kitchen was silent, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I stood there staring at the phone I'd just set down Jim's betrayal, still burning in my mind. My chest felt hollow, like someone had carved out my heart and left a cold, aching void. 18 years of shared mornings, late-night talks, and promises whispered under starlit skies, all reduced to a string of flirty texts with Avery Mitchell. I wanted to scream to shatter the quiet, with the raw pain clawing at my insides, but no sound came. Instead, my hands curled into fists, nails biting into my palms. I wasn't ready to break. Not yet. I sank into a chair, the Seattle skyline blurring through the window. How had I missed it? The signs were there. Jim's late nights, his vague excuses, the way he'd flinch when I touched his shoulder. I'd told myself it was work, that his stress was temporary. What a fool I'd been clinging to a lie, while he built a secret world with her. Avery's face flashed in my memory, her confident smile, her arms around Jim in that Portland photo. I saw his grin, so bright, so unfamiliar. When was the last time he'd looked at me like that? The truth stung, maybe never. Pain gave way to something sharper, anger. It surged through me, hot and unrelenting, like a wave crashing against the rocks of Elliott Bay. Jim hadn't just betrayed me, he'd made me doubt myself. Every time I'd questioned his distance, I'd silenced my instincts, convinced myself I was paranoid. But I wasn't. I was right. And that realization lit a fire in me, not of rage, but of clarity. I wasn't the naive wife anymore, waiting for her husband to come home. I was Nora Bennett, and I deserved better than a marriage built on lies. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply, the air heavy with the scent of cold coffee. I thought of our wedding day, Jim slipping the ring onto my finger, his voice steady, as he vowed to choose me always. Those words felt like ash, now scattered by his choices. But as the anger settled, a new thought took root. I didn't need to scream or beg for answers. I didn't need his apologies. What I needed was to reclaim my dignity, to show him that his secrets couldn't break me. I'd spent years forgiving his flaws, smoothing over his mistakes. No more. This time I'd hold the mirror up to his lies. My mind raced, piecing together what I'd seen on his phone. The dinner at the Pink Door, the way he'd planned every detail. For Avery waterfront view, candlelight her favorite wine. It was meticulous, deliberate, a year-long affair, hidden behind work trips and late meetings. The betrayal wasn't a mistake. It was a choice made over and over. And now I'd make my own. Not out of spite, but out of strength. I wouldn't let Jim write the end of our story. I'd take the pen and write my own. I stood, my legs steady, my resolve like steel. The Nora who'd once waited for Jim was gone. In her place was a woman who saw the truth and refused to look away. Jim thought he could play this game, but he'd underestimated me. I wasn't collapsing, I was rising. And by the time Saturday night arrived, he'd see just how brightly the truth could burn. The Seattle dawn crept through the blinds, casting gray shadows across the kitchen. I sat at the table, a cold coffee mug in my hands, my mind racing like a storm over Puget Sound. Jim's betrayal wasn't just a wound, it was a call to action. He thought he could hide his affair with Avery, that I'd stay the oblivious wife cooking dinner while he wined and dined her at the Pink Door. He was wrong. I wasn't going to scream or cry. I was going to unravel his lies, thread by thread, and make him face the truth in the glare of candlelight. But to do that, I needed a plan, sharp, deliberate, and flawless. First, I needed to know more about Avery Mitchell. I opened my laptop fingers steady as I navigated to the website of Jim's financial consulting firm. A quick search through the employee directory revealed her Avery Mitchell Senior PR Specialist. Her profile photo showed that same confident smile. From the Portland pictures, her blonde hair catching the light. She was 32, ambitious, the kind of woman who thrived in boardrooms and cocktail parties. I clicked through her LinkedIn, noting her connections. One name stood out, Daniel Harper, tagged as her husband. A lead. I switched to social media, typing Daniel Harper into the search bar. His profile appeared and my heart twisted. Dan was a software engineer at Amazon 35 with kind eyes and a warm smile. His posts were full of family moments, hiking in the Cascades, cooking with Avery captions like, "Grateful for my best friend." He had no idea his wife was slipping away with my husband. I stared at his photo, a man who believed in his marriage, just like I had. Dan deserved the truth, but I couldn't just call him up and say, "Your wife's cheating with my husband." No. I needed something subtle, something that would pull him into the light without warning. As a marketing professor, I had one ace up my sleeve: the ability to invite guest speakers for university seminars. I opened my email and crafted a message professional but inviting. "Dear Mr. Harper," I wrote, "I'm Nora Bennett, a professor at the University of Washington. We're hosting a seminar on technology's role in modern marketing, and your work at Amazon caught our attention. I'd love to discuss inviting you as a guest speaker. Could we meet this Saturday, 8:00 p.m. at the Pink Door to talk details?" I hit. Send, my pulse quickening. Less than an hour later, Dan replied, "Professor Bennett, I'm honored. Saturday at 8:00 p.m. works perfectly. Looking forward to it." I read his words, a strange mix of relief and dread settling in my chest. Step one was set. Next, I needed to ensure Dan and I were close enough to Jim and Avery to see everything. I picked up my phone and dialed the Pink Door. "Good evening," the hostess answered, her voice warm. "I'd like to reserve a table for 2 this Saturday at 8:00 p.m. I said, keeping my tone calm. "If possible, near the window, close to a reservation under James Callahan. We're potential partners and I'd like to be nearby." A half-truth, but it worked. "Of course, ma'am," she replied. "We'll seat you right next to their table with a view of Elliott Bay." "Anything else?" I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Just make sure the lighting's soft. It's an important meeting." Step 2, secured. Now the stage was set, but I needed to prepare myself. I walked to my closet, pulling out a black dress, sleek and form-fitting one Jim once said was too bold for dinner. Perfect. I paired it with red heels still in their box, never worn. This wasn't about looking good for anyone else. It was armor, a declaration that I was in control. I stood before the mirror, my reflection no longer the tired wife, but a woman ready for battle. My hair went up in a soft bun, makeup subtle but sharp like a blade hidden in silk. One final move. I opened Jim's email on my laptop, his password still unchanged, careless as ever. A new message caught my eye, a confirmation for a client gift charged to the company card. Digging deeper, I found a trail of expenses. Hotel stays in Portland, dinners, even a spa day, all labeled as business. My blood boiled. Jim wasn't just cheating. he was stealing from his firm to fund his affair. I hesitated, then forwarded the email chain to the CFO anonymously, with a note, "Check James Callahan's expense reports. You'll find discrepancies." It was a risk, but Jim had crossed too many lines. His perfect world was about to crack. I closed the laptop, my plan complete. Saturday night, Dan and I would sit steps from Jim and Avery, close enough to see every glance, every lie. The pink door's candlelight would illuminate more than their dinner. It would expose the truth, and I'd be the one holding the match. My laptop screen glowed in the dim kitchen, Jim's email inbox a maze of lies laid bare. I scrolled deeper past the dinner reservations and flirty notes until a new email stopped me cold. A receipt from a luxury hotel in Portland, charged to his company card labeled Client Entertainment. My jaw tightened. I clicked through more dinners at upscale bistros, a weekend spa package, even a jewelry purchase, all funneled through the firm's expense account. Jim wasn't just betraying me. He was stealing, weaving his affair with Avery into a web of fraud. Each discovery fueled the fire in my chest, not just anger at his infidelity, but disgust at his arrogance. He thought he was untouchable, that I'd never look that his perfect facade would hold. I leaned back, the Seattle rain tapping the window like a restless pulse. This wasn't just personal anymore. Jim's lies had consequences beyond our marriage, and I wasn't going to let him skate by. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitation flickering. Then I acted. I compiled the damning emails, every receipt, every mislabeled expense into a single file. With a deep breath, I sent it anonymously to the firm's CFO. My note: simple, James Callahan's expenses need a closer look. Start with Portland. My heart pounded as the email vanished into the ether. I'd just lit a fuse, one that could burn Jim's career to ash. But that wasn't enough. I needed Jim to feel the weight of his choices at the pink door, not just in a boardroom later. I reopened his calendar, confirming the reservation details. Saturday, 8:00 p.m. waterfront view, Avery's favorite wine pre-ordered. Every detail was a stab proof of how deeply he'd planned this betrayal. I imagined them laughing, clinking glasses, oblivious to the storm I was brewing. My plan with Dan was set, but this new evidence raised the stakes. If the firm acted fast, Jim's world could unravel right there at dinner. His lies exposed not just to me, but to everyone he'd tried to fool. I closed the laptop, my resolve like iron. Saturday night wouldn't just be a confrontation, it'd be a reckoning. Jim thought he could play me for a fool, but I was rewriting the script. By the time those candles flickered out, he'd see the cost of his choices, and I'd be the one walking away, head high. The pink door glowed like a jewel against the Seattle dusk, its warm light spilling onto Post Alley. I arrived early, my red heels clicking on the cobblestones. The salt-tinged breeze from Elliott Bay brushing my skin. Inside the restaurant hummed with life-clinking glasses, soft laughter, and the delicate strains of a piano weaving through the air. Candlelight danced on white tablecloths, casting golden flickers across the room, while the scent of roasted garlic and fresh seafood hung like a promise. The waterfront windows framed the bay, its dark waters shimmering under the city's glow, a view so perfect it could steal your breath. It was the kind of place where love stories were born, or so I'd once thought, dreaming Jim would bring me here. Now it was a battlefield dressed in elegance. I followed the hostess to my table, strategically placed near the window, just steps from where Jim and Avery would sit. The setup was flawless, a small, intimate table for two, a single candle, flickering between crystal wine glasses, the bay's lights winking beyond the glass. I smoothed my black dress, the fabric cool against my skin, and sat my pulse steady but fierce, like a drumbeat only I could hear. I ordered a martini, its sharp chill grounding me as I scanned the room. Every detail, the polished silverware, the murmur of couples. The waiter's crisp white shirt felt heightened as if the world knew what was coming. Dan would arrive soon, unaware of the truth I'd orchestrated. Jim and Avery were still out there, probably laughing, oblivious their perfect evening moments from unraveling. I sipped my drink, the cold glass steady in my hand, and let the restaurant's warmth wrap around me. This wasn't just a dinner, it was the stage for a reckoning, and I was ready to pull back the curtain. The pink door's candlelight flickered, casting shadows that danced across my martini glass. I sat poised, my black dress a silent vow of strength, watching the entrance through the hum of the restaurant. Then they appeared. Jim stepped in first, his navy suit, crisp, the one I'd picked for his last promotion. Avery followed, her green silk dress clinging to her frame, her blonde hair catching the light like a halo. They moved with ease, her hand brushing his arm, their laughter slicing through the piano's melody. My stomach twisted, but I held my gaze steady, a predator sizing up prey. Dan sat across from me, chatting about software trends, oblivious to the storm brewing. I nodded, my eyes locked on the couple now settling at the window table, just steps away. Jim pulled out Avery's chair, his smile too warm, too intimate. They leaned close, her fingers grazing his wrist as he poured wine. The sight burned, but I swallowed it, letting it fuel me. Then it happened. Jim's eyes flicked up, meeting mine across the room. His face drained of color, the wineglass trembling in his hand. Avery followed his gaze, her confident smirk fading to ash. I smiled, slow and deliberate, raising my martini in a mock toast. Dan paused mid-sentence, sensing the shift. "Nora, everything okay?" he asked, his brow creasing. I set my glass down, my voice calm but razor sharp. "Dan, I'd like you to meet someone." I stood, gesturing toward their table. "This is my husband, Jim Callahan, and I believe you know Avery, your wife." The words landed like a thunderclap. The restaurant's hum seemed to freeze, every clink and whisper fading into silence. Dan's eyes widened, darting to Avery, who shrank back, her lips parting but no sound escaping. Jim stammered, "Nora, what? What are you doing here?" His voice cracked, a man caught in a trap he couldn't see coming. I stepped closer, my heels clicking on the hardwood, each step measured. "I'm having dinner, Jim, just like you. Except I'm not hiding anything." I turned to Dan, his face a mask of shock and dawning pain. "Dan, they've been together for a year. Portland trips, secret dinners, all of it. I saw the messages, the photos, the lies." Avery's hand flew to her mouth, a sob breaking free. "Nora, please." "Not here," she whispered, her voice trembling. I tilted my head, my smile cold. "Why not? This is perfect, isn't it? Candlelight waterfront view. The stage you chose for your little romance." Dan stood his chair, scraping his eyes locked on Avery. "Is this true?" His voice was low, raw, each word heavy with betrayal. Avery's tears spilled, but she couldn't speak. Jim tried to intervene, his hands raised. "Nora, let's talk privately. This is a mistake." I swear I cut him off, my voice like ice. "A mistake, no, Jim. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This was a choice. Every text, every trip, every lie you told while I waited at home. I read it all. My words hit like blows, and he flinched, his facade crumbling. Dan turned to Avery, his voice breaking. "I trusted you. Every late night, every work event. I believed you." Avery reached for him, but he stepped back, hurt carved into his face. The room felt smaller, the candlelight too bright, exposing every crack in their lies. I looked at Jim, my husband of 18 years, and saw a stranger. "You thought I'd stay blind," I said softly. "But I see you now, and so does everyone else." I turned, my heart pounding but my head high, leaving them drowning in the truth they couldn't escape. As I stood, the weight of my words still hanging in the air, a new figure emerged from the restaurant's glow. Mark Reynolds, Jim's colleague from the firm, approached, his brow furrowed, a phone in hand. He hadn't noticed me yet, his eyes locked on Jim. "Callahan, we need to talk," he said, voice tight, cutting through the piano's soft notes. Jim's face, already pale, turned ghostly. "Mark, not now," he muttered, but Mark didn't budge. "The CFO got an anonymous tip. Your expense reports, Portland, the hotels, the client gifts, they're auditing everything. You've got some explaining to do." The words hit like a sledgehammer, and Avery's sob caught in her throat. Dan's gaze sharpened, piecing it together. "You used company money for this?" he asked, disgust lacing his voice. Jim's hands shook, his perfect world unraveling faster than he could grasp. I stayed silent, my pulse racing. That email I'd sent, the fuse I'd lit, had ignited right here, right now. Mark glanced at me, then back at Jim, confusion shifting to realization. "What the hell's going on?" he demanded. Jim had no answer. His lies exposed not just to us, but to the firm he'd built his life on. The pink door's elegance couldn't hide his ruin. The Seattle skyline shimmered beyond my new apartment window, in Fremont, a far cry from the Capitol Hill home I'd shared with Jim. The pink door confrontation had shattered more than just our marriage. Jim's world crumbled fast. The firm's audit, sparked by my anonymous email, uncovered months of fraudulent expenses. Hotels, dinners, gifts for Avery, all charged as client costs. By Monday, he was suspended, his name whispered in boardrooms with scorn. He tried to reach me, flooding my phone with texts, voicemails, even roses sent to my office. "Nora, I'm sorry. Let's fix this," one message begged. I deleted them all, my heart sealed shut. His apologies were too late, empty as the promises he'd broken. Avery vanished from Seattle, fleeing to Boise, Idaho after her affair became office gossip. Her social media went dark, her confident facade no match for the shame. I heard she quit her job, unable to face the whispers. Dan, her husband, was left picking up the pieces, his trust in her as broken as mine in Jim. The fallout wasn't just personal, it was public, a spectacle that left them both exposed. I moved out the week after trading our sleek apartment for a cozy Fremont loft with exposed brick and a view of the canal. The space felt like a fresh page, untainted by Jim's lies. At the university, whispers followed me too. Colleagues murmuring about my dramatic exit or Jim's downfall. Some pitied me, others judged. "Couldn't she just forgive him?" one professor muttered. I ignored them, my focus on rebuilding. I threw myself into a new project, helping small businesses at Pike Place Market craft marketing campaigns. The work was grounding, each success, a bakery's viral ad, a florist's new logo, reminding me I was more than a betrayed wife. I was Nora Bennett, and I was enough. Jim's calls stopped by month's end, his silence louder than his pleas. The firm demoted him, his reputation in tatters. Seattle's tight-knit corporate world turned its back, and I felt no guilt. He'd built his cage, not me. I stood taller, my roots sinking deeper into a life I was carving alone. The Fremont loft became my sanctuary, its brick walls and soft light a canvas for a new life. Seattle's rain pattered against the windows, a steady rhythm that matched my slow, deliberate steps toward healing. The pain of Jim's betrayal lingered sharp in quiet moments, but I refused to let it define me. I was Nora Bennett, not just a wife who'd been lied to. I was a woman learning to stand alone, and that felt like a quiet victory. I signed up for a painting class in Ballard a whim that turned into a lifeline. The studio smelled of turpentine and possibility, and each brushstroke blues and grays, blending into a Seattle skyline. After a storm felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. My first painting, a rain-slicked city under a breaking sky, hung in my loft, a reminder that beauty could emerge from chaos. The other students, a mix of retirees and young artists, became unexpected friends, their laughter easing the weight I'd carried. Dan and I stayed in touch, meeting for coffee at the Starbucks in Pike Place Market. Over steaming lattes, we shared our scars, his from Avery's lies, mine from Jim's. "I'm thinking about divorce," he admitted one morning, his voice heavy. "But I don't know if I can trust again." I nodded, understanding too well. "It's not about trusting someone else yet," I said. "It's about trusting yourself." Our talks weren't romantic, but they were real, two survivors navigating the wreckage together. At work, I poured energy into my community project, helping Pike Place vendors shine. Crafting a campaign for a local coffee roaster brought a spark I hadn't felt in years. Each small win, new customers, a viral post rebuilt my confidence. One evening, I sat on my balcony, the Space Needle glowing in the distance. The city's pulse felt like my own, steady, alive. "I'm not angry anymore," I whispered to the night. "I'm free." The hurt hadn't vanished, but it was softer now, like a bruise fading. I wasn't running from the past. I was building over it. My loft, my work, my art. They weren't just distractions. They were proof I could create something whole, something mine. And as the rain fell, washing the city clean, I knew I was washing away the last shadows of Jim's lies, step by careful step. The whispers started at the university, soft but persistent, like Seattle's endless drizzle. Colleagues in the marketing department traded glances when I passed, their voices hushed. "Nora's so strong, but was it worth torching her marriage?" One professor murmured over coffee. Another boulder cornered me at a faculty meeting. "You didn't have to humiliate Jim like that, did you? People make mistakes." Her words stung, painting me as the villain, not the woman who'd uncovered a year of lies. I stood tall, my voice steady. I didn't humiliate him. I stopped hiding his choices. She blinked, caught off guard, but the judgment lingered in her eyes. The gossip spread beyond campus. At a Pike Place Market fundraiser, a friend of Jim's pulled me aside. "Nora, you're tough, but you've ruined his life. Couldn't you have worked it out?" I forced a smile, my heart pounding. His life, he ruined ours. I just turned on the light. I walked away, the weight of their words heavy but not crushing. Seattle's tight-knit circles thrived on appearances, and I'd broken the unspoken rule, keep family dramas private, no matter the cost. I found refuge in a women's support group in Capitol Hill, a small circle of strangers who understood. Over tea in a cozy community center, I shared my story, the dinner at the Pink Door, the fallout, the stairs. A woman named Sarah, her own divorce fresh, squeezed my hand. "They'll judge you because it's easier than facing their own cracks. Keep going." Her words were a lifeline. I wasn't alone. The group taught me to tune out the noise, to value my truth over their opinions. Each meeting chipped away at the shame I hadn't realized I carried, replacing it with defiance. I wasn't just surviving their scrutiny. I was rising above it, my self-respect fiercer than their whispers. A year later, the Seattle skyline sparkled under a rare clear sky, its lights reflecting off the waters of Puget Sound. I stepped into the Edgewater Hotel, my navy dress hugging my frame, my mother's silver necklace catching the chandelier's glow. The occasion was a celebration for Professor Linda Hayes, my mentor, retiring after decades shaping minds like mine. I held a wrapped gift, a first-edition marketing book she'd always loved, feeling lighter than I had in years. The ballroom buzzed with colleagues and students, laughter mingling with the clink of champagne glasses. I was Nora Bennett, no longer defined by a broken marriage, but by the life I'd rebuilt. Then I saw him. Jim stood by the bar, thinner, his hair flecked with gray, his once confident posture softened by time. Our eyes met, and the room seemed to pause. He approached, a hesitant smile on his lips. Nor, he said, his voice rough like gravel underfoot. "I didn't expect you here." I nodded, calm. "Linda's special to us both." He looked down, swirling his drink. "I owe you a real apology. I lost everything, my job, my reputation, you." I was a fool. His words hung heavy, sincere but worn. I met his gaze, unflinching. "Jim, you didn't just lose me. You lost yourself. I hope you find peace, but that's your journey now." My voice was steady, no trace of the pain that once consumed me. He nodded, stepping back, giving me space to move forward. I turned, and there was Dan, entering in a charcoal sweater, his warm smile cutting through the crowd. He waved, joining me at a table where we laughed with old friends, the past a distant shadow. Dan and I had grown close, not rushing, just two people, finding solace in shared healing. As the night unfolded, I felt whole, my heart no longer tethered to Jim's lies, but open to new possibilities grounded in my own strength. The Edgewater's golden lights faded as Dan and I stepped onto a Fremont pier, the cool breeze off Lake Union brushing my skin. We'd grown close over months, our coffee chats at Pike Place Market, evolving into something deeper, unhurried. Together we'd launched a community project, boosting local artisans with marketing campaigns that lit up Fremont's markets. One evening, after a bustling art fair, Dan paused by the water, his eyes steady. "Nora." "I'm not pushing," he said, voice soft but sure. "But if you ever want to build something real, no secrets, just us, I'm here." His hand found mine warm, no pressure, just truth. I smiled, the city's glow reflecting in my heart. "Let's start small, Dan, like this moment." We stood there, the lake's ripples catching the moonlight, a quiet promise forming. My future wasn't a grand plan, but a path of small, honest steps. I saw myself in my loft painting, teaching, laughing with friends, my life no longer shadowed by Jim's betrayal. Dan's presence felt like sunlight after rain, and as we walked on hand in hand, I knew I was ready not for a fairy tale, but for something true, built on trust. Standing on that Fremont pier, the Seattle lights twinkling like stars, I realized the past year had taught me more than pain. It had shown me how to live. First, never let love eclipse your self-respect. Jim's betrayal hurt, but staying blind to his lies would have cost me more. Like I did, trust your instincts and face the truth, no matter how sharp it cuts. Second, don't let society's whispers define you. Colleagues judged me, friends questioned my choices, but their opinions aren't your truth. Hold your head high like I did and choose your own path. Third, healing isn't a race, it's a journey. Painting, working with Pike Place vendors, finding solace with Dan. These small steps rebuilt me. Find your own joys, however small, and let them anchor you. To me, this story isn't just about surviving betrayal, it's about thriving beyond it. In a world that often demands we stay silent, choosing yourself is radical. You're not just a spouse, a friend, or a title, you're you, and that's enough. So take it from me, Nora, when life breaks, you rebuild. with pieces that shine brighter than before.